The most expensive mistake in history. Imagine a machine so advanced it's essentially a flying computer, a $2 billion masterpiece of stealth and engineering known as the B-2 Spirit. It's designed to penetrate the most sophisticated air defenses on Earth undetected. But on February 23, 2008, one of these invincible bombers, the Spirit of Kansas, was brought down by something as simple as a few drops of water. This wasn't a mid-air collision or a missile strike. It was a 5-cent mistake in the way the crew handled moisture. In just 17 seconds, $1.4 billion in 2008 currency, adjusted to over $2 billion today, literally went up in smoke on a runway in Guam. It remains the most expensive single aircraft accident in the history of aviation. The technical mystery of the port transducer units. To understand how this happened, we have to look at the B-2's skin. Most planes have Pitot tubes, those little needles sticking out of the nose to measure air pressure. But needles reflect radar, and radar is the enemy of stealth. So the B-2 uses 24 port transducer units, or PTUs. These are flush-mounted sensors that sit flat against the aircraft's body. They feed air pressure data into 4 independent flight control computers. If these computers don't have perfect data, the B-2, which is inherently unstable because it has no tail, can't actually fly. But here's the mystery. The sensors weren't broken. They were just confused. Guam's tropical trap. The Spirit of Kansas had been deployed to Andersen Air Force Base in Guam for 4 months. If you've ever been to Guam in February, you know it's not just humid, it's oppressive. Leading up to the crash, heavy, lashing rains had pounded the airfield. Moisture had seeped into the tiny cavities of the PTUs. This was a known issue. Back in 2006, maintenance crews discovered that if they turned on the aircraft's pitot heaters before calibrating the sensors, the 500-degree heat would evaporate the moisture and everything would work fine. But here is where the human element fails the machine. That heated up trick, it was never written down in the official manuals. It was tribal knowledge passed from one technician to another by word of mouth. On morning of February 23, 2008, the crew of the Spirit of Kansas, Major Ryan Link and Captain Justin Grieve, received a standard Air Data CAL message during their pre-flight checks. They followed the book. They performed the calibration, but they didn't know about the heater workaround. They were zeroing the most expensive sensors in the world while they were still full of water. This created what engineers call a calibration bias. When the sensors were full of water, the computer recorded that pressure as its baseline. But as the plane taxied to the runway, the crew turned on the pitot heat for the flight, just like the checklist said. The water evaporated. Now the sensors were dry, but the computer was still subtracting that old water weight from its readings. The result was a catastrophic set of lies. The cockpit showed the plane was 136 feet higher than it actually was, and it was moving 12 knots faster than its true speed. At 10:12 a.m., the brakes were released. 19 seconds into the takeoff roll, a yellow master caution light flashed in the cockpit. The air data matrix showed a 2-on-2 condition. 2 flight computers were disagreeing with the other 2. But because the plane was already moving at over 100 knots, the go-no-go speed, and the warnings cleared themselves after just 6 seconds as the sensors finished drying, the pilots decided to continue. They thought the glitch had resolved itself. They were wrong. As the Spirit of Kansas reached what the pilots thought was 142 knots, Major Link pulled back on the stick. In reality, the plane was only doing 130 knots, barely enough to stay in the air. But the real nightmare started the moment the wheels left the ground. The flight control system automatically switched from ground mode to flight mode. In flight mode, the computer takes over to maintain stability. Because of the miscalibrated sensors, the computer believed the aircraft had a negative angle of attack, that it was diving towards the ground. To save the plane, the computer commanded a violent, uncommanded 30-degree nose-up pitch. At only 80 feet off the ground, a 30-degree pitch up is a death sentence. The bomber stalled instantly. As the left wingtip gouged into the dirt, both pilots pulled their ejection handles. They survived, but the Spirit of Kansas tumbled and vanished into a massive fireball. Today, only 19 B-2 Spirits remain in the world. A single undetected environmental factor, humidity, crippled a $2 billion weapon system because the people who knew the fix didn't write it down. It's a sobering reminder. In the world of high-tech warfare, the smallest drop of water can be just as deadly as an enemy missile.